Hello, my name is Brandon, and I go by Bakerreads across all my platforms. And today I wanted to talk about some of my favorite books that I've read over the past couple of years. Just physical books, because over the past 3 years, I've actually been on a book buying ban. So most of the books that I have read over the past couple of years that I have loved, I don't have physical copies of. So I'll probably do another video with that later. But I feel like this little stack does a pretty good job at encompassing my tastes overall. I mostly read horror, thrillers, some sci-fi and fantasy, but I love it when things get dark and weird. So yeah, let's get into it. Karin Slaughter is my absolute favorite author of all time. It's not even a competition. It's not even close. I love her so much. When I first got back into reading in 2018, I had read a couple Gillian Flynn books, and I think I read Jurassic Park again. And then I got into Karin Slaughter, and oh my gosh, I love her so much. Her books are brutal, and the characters are so real, and the situations are so dark and upsetting. I just love her so much. But The Good Daughter is about these two estranged sisters. They were separated in their childhood after a very extremely tragic event, and they are reunited 20 years later after something else horrible happens again. And it's so honestly, it's disturbing. It is messed up. But it is just so impactful. The characters are so real. I just felt like my heart was being ripped from my chest during certain scenes. And all of Karin Slaughter's books are like that. But this one in particular, it's a standalone, which she doesn't have very many of those. Most of her books take place in her Grant County or Will Trent series. But yeah, this is a standalone. Pretty Girls is the other book that you will probably see recommended from her or by her the most, but I think this one is a better start. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer is the first book in the Southern Reach. I almost said trilogy, but there's 4 books now. I haven't read the 4th book, but I really need to. But it's a part of the Southern Reach series. This first book is about a team of scientists that enter an ecological hot zone that's sealed off from the rest of the world, known as Area X. A lot of weird things happen there, and they're just trying to figure out what is happening. This is probably my favorite in the series so far. I think the vibes of this book are absolutely immaculate. It is very creepy and atmospheric. Almost immediately, you are just enveloped in this very rich, kind of dreadful, weird, mysterious atmosphere. I think Jeff Vandermeer's books are definitely classified as weird horror or the new weird. So not a whole lot of things are not your questions won't necessarily be answered, but it is a really good time and I highly recommend it. Things get very crazy. The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell is about this pregnant widow that moves to her late husband's crumbling estate in the countryside, and in it there is a locked door, and behind the locked door is a painted figure that looks exactly like our main character. And some strange things start to happen. This is so creepy. It's kind of like dual timelines, but it is just very, very strange. And the ending really surprised me. I was not expecting it to go that hard, I guess. But yeah, this one is one of my favorites. It's Gothic, horror, creepy, atmospheric, the works. This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno is about this guy that's grieving the recent loss of his wife, and while also trying to outrun this entity that refuses to let him go and that pursues him across the United States as he flees. This one is also very weird as a running theme, but this is also kind of divisive. A lot of people have mixed feelings on this one. It's kind of like cosmic body grief horror. It's honestly kind of out of pocket. A lot of people kind of mischaracterize this as a haunted Alexa, kind of possession horror kind of, and that's what it says on the back of the book. But the Alexa device in this book is really it doesn't play a big role in the story. When I read this, I was like, technology horror, let's go, but it's really not that. It is strange and haunting and honestly kind of depressing. Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey is definitely one of my favorite books of all time. I actually have it tattooed. This is this little symbols on the spine of the book. But it is set in a world where almost all animal and plant life are extinct or endangered, and it follows our main character with a very dark past as she tracks the last known flock of Arctic terns on their final migration. And, this is kind of ecological fiction, and it is depressing and tragic and devastating and kind of brutal at times. It's pretty intense sometimes. I can admit that it's not a perfect book. Like, I wish it ended differently, and I just wish certain character interactions played out a little bit differently. But I read this at the perfect time in my life. Most definitely rewired how I think about certain things like grief and loss. And like, one of the biggest themes is kind of like staying in the world, even though you don't really see a reason to do so. You know, people need you, the world needs you. And even if you can't find a reason for yourself, be that reason for other people or animals. Like, I don't want to give away too much, but I just love it so much. I love the central themes. I love the way that it made me feel. It is very cathartic. I sobbed like a baby when I read it for the first time, and every time I have read it subsequently, I think I've read it like 4 or 5 times, I always at least tear up because it is so beautiful in the way that it is executed. I cannot recommend it enough. It is definitely different than like almost all of my other recommendations because, again, it is not like horror or thriller, even though it is like dark and upsetting. It is ecological fiction about this very tortured main character and very tortured, flawed main character, but so good. The Girl with All the Gifts by A.M.R. Carey takes place in a world that is filled with cordyceps zombies, like the zombies from The Last of Us, and it's set in a school for zombie children. And there is a kind of like prequel sequel to this called The Boy on the Bridge that I recommend also, but I recommend you read this one first, even though technically it is a prequel. But anyway, this one, again, I feel like I'm repeating the same things over and over again, but this one is very, very intense. It is emotional. I was not expecting to get so emotionally attached to some of these characters, but it really hits you. It is hard-hitting. It is gory and graphic at times because it is a zombie book, but it is just so, so impactful. And the ending is absolutely insane. Come Closer by Sarah Grant is about this woman that is experiencing some pretty troubling changes to her body and her mind, and she's unsure if she's like just actually losing it or if it's like demonic possession, if something is possessing her. And this one I really, really enjoy. It's really, really short and very creepy and atmospheric and almost claustrophobic because it is written in first person. And as the main character continues to kind of, you know, enter the slow descent of madness over the course of the story, it just gets more, kind of just feel like you're being suffocated a little bit. And it kind of plays with formatting a little bit too, and that also helps the immersion. And yeah, it just really creeped me out. I think it is a really solid story. This one's also really divisive, but creeped me out. Confessions by Kanan Minotaur is about a middle school teacher that is out for revenge against 2 of her students after a tragic event, accident, something really bad happens, and she is out to get these 2 students. And this is one of those books that, like, with each chapter, you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what I am reading. Like, it's kind of like twist or revelation after twist or revelation, and it just keeps going and going and going, and then it ends in a very over-the-top way. It is honestly out of pocket, and I was not expecting to clutch my pearls as much as I did, but it is just so compulsively bingeable and just crazy, just over the top. Anya Alburn is another one of my favorite authors, and I actually had The Devil Crept in that original stack when I first started because I talk about Brother all the time. I'm not going to talk about it some more, but it is a coming-of-age horror story about this teenage boy that does not want to live with his family of cannibalistic serial killers anymore. He wants to break away and not live that lifestyle anymore, but of course his family is not going to let him go that easily. This features one of the most like upsetting, disturbing, and just oh my gosh, family dynamics I have ever read. I like Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn is also one of my favorite books, and it has a really upsetting, like, family dynamic. This is worse. And it's one of those books that is kind of just like meant to crush your spirit. It is in your face, upsetting, relentlessly like triggering. And it just does not stop. And it is like that until it ends. And it is, I loved it so much. I read it like 4 years ago. This was actually sent to me by one of my followers. It's like a blind date with a book box. I had never heard of Anya Alburn before, and kind of opened my eyes not only to like the rest of her books, because she has like 11 or 12 other books, and I highly recommend almost all of them. And I can't wait for what she puts out next. But, and like I had read kind of disturbing and in-your-face books before, because that's the same year that I read this. I also read The Troop by Nick Cutter. But, oh my gosh, it just made me realize that I really like it when things get dark and disturbing and upsetting. I do have a limit, and honestly anymore, this is kind of at that limit, but yeah, it is, yeah. How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu is a series of interconnected short stories about a climate plague that has decimated the whole world, and it kind of takes place like over the years, over the course of the devastation, and like how humanity and the different characters react to it. And this one is, again, extremely devastating. I think a lot of the writing is very beautiful and poetic, and there's like a lot of different stories that really will hit you right in the feels, but there's one about a euthanasia roller coaster for dying children. There's one about talking pig. And it's just so sad and so tragic, but again, like beautifully written. And there is some hope in the book. It's not like, you know, bleak or absolutely devastating like some of the other books that I read and have recommended in this video, but yeah, it is a lot. Maggie's grave takes place in a dying mountain town where hundreds of years ago a woman was killed for being a witch, and now she is back and out for revenge against the town's remaining inhabitants. And David Sodergren's books are, you know, they play out like campy horror movies. They're very gory and over the top, especially this book. It is so graphic. The body horror is so cringeworthy and insane. But all of his books are kind of written with a sort of like, I would say like dark, almost like flippant humor that it is just so fun. Even though things are gory and ridiculously over the top and in your face, it is so much fun. And all of his books are like that. Like The Horror by him is also really good. I've read every single one of his books. He is also, he just revealed, he is also the author Carl John Lee. And Carl John Lee's books are extreme horror, kind of without any of the redeeming qualities that his David Sodergren books have. So yeah, there's a lot of content if you do get into his books. This one, again, is probably his most gory, most intense, most violent. But there's just something about his writing that is just so easy to get into, and it's just a lot of fun. You know, kind of like a popcorn horror book. Again, it's disturbing and disgusting and gross and brutal and graphic, but they're fun. I don't know. Intercepts by T.J. Payne takes place in a government facility where human experimentation has led to the discovery of psychic abilities, and our main character's daughter is actually being targeted by one of the patients, like telepathically targeted. And this one, it honestly plays out like a possession horror book, even though it is not. There's like haunting elements. It is so creepy. I've said it before, but I feel like it's written in such a way, there's like one scene, it kind of reads like a jump scare, but in a book. And it's really hard to explain. I think it is just such a solid recommendation. It is just very impactful, very graphic, but also very creepy. I think it balances like the graphic gore body horror and the creepy, haunting, paranormal aspects really well. Pen Pal by Nathan Auerbach is about a man that is starting to reconstruct his past, and he's starting to realize that there was something very wrong happening in his childhood that he's just now realizing as an adult. And this is based on a creepypasta, and I just think it is so creepy and so well done. Each chapter kind of plays out like a different kind of event in the main character's childhood that, you know, at the time, he didn't realize there was something else like sinister or nefarious happening behind the scenes, but there very much is. There's one scene in particular that gave me like full body chills. I don't want to say which one it is, but it's about like halfway through the book. I just thought it was so well executed. It's just one of those things that like once you realize like what it means, like the implications behind this discovery, it's like, oh my gosh, like, could you imagine? And of course, all I did was like imagine myself in that scenario. But yeah, very creepy. I think this is a really good book to recommend if you're just kind of now just getting into your own horror journey, because it is very easy to read, very easy to follow along with, and very creepy. Finally is The Deep by Nick Cutter. And I always feel like I have to give a disclaimer when I recommend this book because it is extremely divisive. Probably the most divisive book that I have ever featured on my channel. And I totally understand why. So one thing you need to going into it is Nick Cutter always features a lot of very kind of gratuitous animal harm in his books, animal cruelty, and this one does, not as much as like The Troop, but you know, it does feature it. And you know, it's just, it's a lot of very traumatic things written in a way that is, you know, very soul crushing. And I just highly recommend reading other reviews before you get into this because people are very divided. But it's about this memory disease that has kind of ravaged the whole world. And it's about our main character traveling to a research station on the bottom of the ocean on the Mariana Trench in hopes of finding his brother. And hopefully they can find a cure for the disease that is destroying everything. And yeah, it features a lot of very gnarly body horror. You know, it is probably one of the like scariest, freakiest, creepiest books that I have read. The way that some of the scenes are written, it is so claustrophobic and so creepy. I always imagine myself in books and just like imagining me in that situation. Like I would just, I mean, what is the point? Like it is so hopeless and upsetting and disturbing and out of pocket again. And also, again, definitely check reviews, like I said, because it is extremely divisive. I almost didn't even mention it. I always second guess myself, like, should I mention the deep midnight gutter? But yeah, yeah, that's all the books for now. But I am going to make a couple more videos like this, just talking about some more of the physical books that I have really enjoyed over the past few years. And then I'm going to make other videos talking about some of the books that I have read digitally that I don't have physical copies of. I'll also be doing kind of like themed book recommendations, but just talking a little bit longer for each book. They won't be like as like snippy or succinct as, you know, the videos or recommendation videos that I post on other places. I'll probably also do like library and like bookstore tours where I'll just go through and like, oh, I recommend this book. Oh, I really enjoy this book. Oh, I really like the look of this book, those kind of things. And if there's a book that I am just like absolutely obsessed with, I will probably post like a very long, rambly video, just talking about all the things that really worked for me. And then also I have a series on my other platform where I kind of did very like in-depth like spoilers of books, and I did one for Maggie's Grave, and I actually have my notes on it still, so I might post this one, but then also make other very long spoilery videos of some of the books that I have read that I think might be fun to listen to. So that is it for now, but thank you guys. I hope this was not a complete mess. I honestly am very intimidated by the YouTube, like how everything is set up. I am still very much getting used to it, so please bear with me, but I hope you guys stick around, and I hope you like the video. I really appreciate you all. I love getting on here and just talking about the books that I have enjoyed. And so yeah, I just appreciate you, appreciate your time. Thank you, and I will see you next time.